Good evening, you're watching AWANI Tonight with me, Faye Kwan. Several areas in the capital were inundated this morning due to heavy rainfall, with readings in the city centre showing over 114 millimetres per hour. This is almost double the normal rate of 60 millimetres per hour, according to the Kuala Lumpur City Hall or DBKL. They said that continuous rain starting around 8:30 a.m. led to flooding in some areas due to the overflow of the main rivers, namely Sungai Batu, Sungai Klang and Sungai Gombak. DBKL personnel were at the scene to ensure the situation at affected areas were under control. However, they advised road users to exercise caution when passing through areas where water levels have not fully subsided. Residents in Taman Melawati, Ampang were evacuated after a landslide cut off 20 homes from accessing the main road. Authorities had them relocated to a nearby multi-purpose hall. Police received information about a landslide at the intersection of Jalan Sedang and Jalan E6 in Taman Melawati at 10:30 a.m. A team of 6 personnel and officers from the Ampang Fire and Rescue Station were dispatched to the scene. They reported a landslide spanning a 20 by 20 metre area with a height of 30 metres. A car and a guardhouse cabin were damaged due to falling debris, but no casualties were reported. Meanwhile, the water levels for several rivers in Selangor have crossed the warning level. Our editor Shafizan Johari shares a snapshot of the situation at one of the villages in Hulu Langat.
Well, I'm now at the Kampung Sungai Serai in Hulu Langat, and if you can see behind me, there's a massive flood, but not as massive as the one that happened in year 2021, in December 2021. But many are afraid, and many are still traumatized of the massive flood that happened about 2 years ago. And we hope, the prayers are now that this flood wouldn't worsen. That's for tonight. I'm Shafizan Johari for Astro AWANI.
Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim has left it entirely to the police and the Attorney General to take action regarding the international report by Bloomberg, which alleges his interference in an investigation by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission or MACC. He stated in the Dewan Rakyat today that the next steps will only be made once a full investigation is completed. He was responding to a question from Pasir Mas MP Ahmad Fadli Shari on the government's willingness to pursue legal action against Bloomberg over the alleged interference in the MACC investigation. Previously, former UMNO Supreme Council member Isham Jalil had called on Anwar to sue Bloomberg over the claims. In the Prime Minister's question session, Anwar also clarified that he cannot boycott or cut ties with Bloomberg as he respects media freedom.
Soal mengapa saya terus ada hubungan dengan Bloomberg. Ini Bloomberg adalah satu media antarabangsa terkenal. Malah bila kerajaan Qatar mengadakan program dan lawatan rasmi saya ke Qatar baru-baru ini beberapa bulan lalu, mereka anjur supaya saya hadir sebagai pengucap utama dalam conference yang dianjur oleh Bloomberg. Jadi kita bedakan kerana kita menghormati prinsip media bebas. Kalau ada fitnah, kita saman ataupun polis mengambil tindakan khusus tentang itu. Tapi bukanlah kita maknanya harus mengharamkan atau membatalkan semua acara dengan Bloomberg. Jadi bagi saya prinsip itu harus terpakai bagi semua.
More than half of the 558 children linked to Global Equine Services and Business Holdings, GISB, now under the care of the Social Welfare Department, are underweight. Speaking at the Dewan Rakyat, Women, Family and Community Development Minister Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri reveals that 30 of the rescued children also suffer from severe cognitive disorders. A cognitive assessment of 385 children aged 7 and above revealed that while 71.95% showed no signs of cognitive disorders, 20.26% had moderate issues, and 7.79% suffered from severe cognitive impairments. Nancy noted although only 3 children hold a disability card, 27 others display symptoms of disabilities. She added that 5.7%, or about 30 of the children, either have no parents or lack information about their parents. In terms of education, 56.3% of the children have attended some form of schooling. The Social Welfare Department had secured a 2-month temporary custody order for the children. Nancy stressed that returning them to their families is a top priority, but the ministry must first ensure the families can provide proper care before reunification can take place. We'll be back with more after the break.
Rambut gugur lagi? Macam mana Gunakan Pantene baharu dengan provitamin mikro yang meresap dan menguatkan rambut dari dalam. Rambut 10 kali lebih kuat terhadap rambut gugur. Pantene baharu.
Satu dekad penuh gemilang. Sipata Kolik kini kembali penuh dengan aksi mendebarkan. Dapatkan tiket anda sekarang. Pelanggan Astro juga boleh memenangi tiket di aplikasi My Astro. Jangan lepas peluang keemasan ini.
Welcome back. Parliament is expected to debate on constitutional amendments that will allow Malaysian mothers to confer citizenship to their children born abroad. However, other amendments in the proposed bill could have significant consequences on vulnerable groups. Adlin Adam Teo from Family Frontiers calls for these amendments to be debated separately to prevent any negative impacts.
This is a long-coming amendment that the mothers have been pushing for, that have campaigned for tirelessly, and it's a long-standing issue, right? This issue has existed since Merdeka, right? So this is something that we're looking forward to, the debate and the voting for this amendment. Now, however, there have been some regressive amendments that have been proposed amendments that have been bundled with this legislative package, and that is very concerning for us, right? So we would like to reiterate our stance to decouple the amendments because they are fundamentally different in nature. So if this goes together as a bundle, what we will do is we will introduce a whole new list of barriers and risks to vulnerable groups, right? And this would actually undermine national security. Why? Because we will be operating with people who are not in the system, right? How do you manage and control, people who are not within the system, right? How do we make sure so that these vulnerable groups can operate in society, can contribute? And you have to remember, at the end of the day, it's the children who suffer, right? Because without legal documentation, how can they properly go to school? How can they get the healthcare needs when they need to? Let's really make a proper effort to solve a long-standing issue and not put more barriers and make it harder for us to maintain a just and equitable society.
Adlin also discusses the impact of some of these proposed changes if Parliament proceeds with tabling the bill in its current form.
It will not bring relief to what is already quite a vulnerable part of society, right? So there are different categories to that. Number one is children of PRs, right? Now, we're not talking about what you would typically think of PRs, but really people who are living in the interior areas in Sabah and Sarawak, orang asal and orang asli. These regressive amendments will exacerbate their situation. That's number one. Number two, by reducing the age of qualification for citizenship from 21 to 18, you actually deduct 3 years. Right? And many people say, what's the big deal with 3 years? But 3 years means a lot, because this is the time when you can actually prepare all your documents. You don't want applicants to age out, meaning once they hit 18, that's it. Your chance is over, right? And we know that applications take a long time to process. Perhaps you could only go through 2 cycles, right, of citizenship applications, and then you're out. So why are we limiting this, right? Why are we bringing, again, more barriers to people who are just starting their life? So it's really the spirit and the fundamental nature of these amendments. Don't give to one group and take from another.
The United Nations says its peacekeepers in southern Lebanon will remain in their positions, despite repeated calls from Israel for them to move aside for its forces there. The UN peacekeeping chief confirms that the decision to keep the UNIFIL force in place has the full support of both the UN Security Council and the member states contributing troops to the mission.
UNIFIL would currently stay in all its position in spite of the calls that were made by the Israeli Defense Forces to vacate the position that are in the vicinity of the Blue Line. I want to emphasize that this decision still remains. It was confirmed this morning by the Secretary General. We had an executive committee meeting on that specific issue.
On Sunday, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu bluntly warned the UN to move from its bases in southern Lebanon, which he said were providing a human shield to Hezbollah fighters. The UN has accused Israel of deliberately targeting its bases, with 5 peacekeepers injured in the past week. The UNIFIL, which has around 10,000 members, is deployed in southern Lebanon as a buffer with Israel.
North Korea has blown up sections of roads connecting it to South Korea on its side of the border, further escalating tensions between the two nations. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff confirmed in a statement that parts of the road just north of the military demarcation line were destroyed around midday. In response, South Korea's military fired warning shots near its side of the border. While the roads have been unused for years, their destruction signals that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un may no longer be open to negotiations with Seoul. This comes after Pyongyang vowed last week to sever inter-Korean roads and railways and fortify its border. Tensions on the Korean peninsula have risen after North Korea accused the South of sending drones with propaganda leaflets over its capital. The North has already begun installing landmines and barriers along the border, and last week pledged to permanently seal its southern border in response to joint military exercises in South Korea and the presence of US nuclear assets. Canada has expelled 6 Indian diplomats, including the High Commissioner, citing their involvement in the murder of a Sikh separatist leader on Canadian soil last year. In response, India ordered the expulsion of 6 senior Canadian diplomats, including the acting High Commissioner, and announced the withdrawal of its envoy from Canada, contradicting Canada's expulsion claims. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said his government responded after police began pursuing credible allegations that Indian agents were directly involved in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Police had also uncovered evidence of a worsening campaign against Canadian citizens by agents of the Indian government.
I think it is obvious that the government of India made a fundamental error in thinking that they could engage in supporting criminal activity against Canadians here on Canadian soil, whether it be murders or extortion or other violent acts. It is absolutely unacceptable for any country, any democracy that upholds the rule of law. That is why we have taken such significant measures.
India has rejected the allegations as preposterous, accusing Trudeau of pandering to Canada's large Sikh community for political gain. Canada is home to the highest population of Sikhs outside their home state of Punjab, and demonstrations in recent years have irked India's government. That report wraps up AWANI Tonight. I'm Faye Kwan. Thank you for watching and good night.